Get started. Good evening, everybody, and those that are joining us. Welcome to another Rev Talk. It's great to be doing these sessions again. Sorry they've been a bit sporadic over the last few months, but hopefully we've got a good lineup of people that we have planned for every month right up really until Christmas. So yeah, so welcome to you all, and particularly welcome to Mr. Andrew Plumb, or Andy Plumb, car designer, author, general good egg, and Andy and I have been talking about this session for a while now, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
We have. But Andy and I both had the wonderful distinction of going to Cov University and training to be car designers. So it's going to be brilliant hearing from Andy tonight on something that's a bit of an icon, really, in terms of the automotive world. So, yeah, as usual, folks, you've got the comment section. Please post questions, comments, thoughts, observations, obviously providing they're nice ones. Yeah, and Andy's going to be sharing some brilliant images with us tonight as well, so we're in for a real treat. So Andy, good evening and welcome. How are we tonight?
I'm fine, thanks for having me.
Oh, great to have you. Thank you for joining us. I guess the first thing we'd like to know is a little about you. Who are you and where do you come from?
Right, well, I'm Andy Plumb, and I come from South Devon, so I'm a cream and then jam person on my scone, and
okay,
top crimp pasties and all that, and so yeah, I've sort of wanted to be a car designer since I was, well, a little nipper really, an ankle biter. So yeah, and I just followed Ford's advice on how to do it. So went to Cov Uni in the end. So
had you always loved cars from being a wee whippersnapper, or?
Absolutely obsessed. I remember being able to tell my parents when it was dark, looking through the back window of the car, what car was following us with the headlights.
Wow, that I mean, that's genuine anorak status, that is, isn't it? I mean, yeah. You know, you're right up there, really.
Zip.
Zip. Oh yes, the Parker is hooded and ready to go.
Yes.
Brilliant. So did you have any particular car loves as a kid? Were there any type of cars or kind of bits of the car community that were your thing?
I absolutely, for some reason, I absolutely love Fords. I loved, you know, I was a kid when the Ford Sierra came out, and then that sort of bustleback Granada as well, and that sort of lit my fire. I can't tell you why, but that lit my fire, and that really got me into it, the Ford design.
Brilliant. The Sierra, I mean, I remember the Sierra. It was one of those seminal cars, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah.
It was just.
My dad always had Fords. He had a Cortina or two as a company car, and he loved the Cortina, and you know that was okay. But when they launched the Sierra, I think I was just about old enough to appreciate it, and Dad said, well, I'm going to get a Sierra as a company car, and he surprised us with the delivery of it. And there's a photo of me somewhere looking, you know, absolutely beside myself as a 13-year-old or whatever it was, and yeah, it was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, fantastic. And did the love of cars then go hand in hand with design, or did that come a bit later? Or
no, again, I always loved sketching cars. I can't explain it, but it's always something I did. Instead of it's the usual story for everybody. Instead of paying attention at school and, you know, doing things, I end up sketching, and any free time I had, you know, do you want to go out and play football with your mates? No, I'd rather stay in and sketch.
Yeah, school. What was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. So, so you do your O levels or GCSEs, as it would have been for us.
Yeah.
And then I guess A levels, and then go to Cov to train.
That's right. Yeah, and it's particularly prominent in our house at the moment because it's A level results week next week. And you know, I remember the feeling of trepidation because I was told I needed 2 C's to get into Coventry in maths and physics, my nemesis, maths and physics. And I remember the nervousness. And then when I got the results of 2 D's and an E, I was absolutely, you know, I'm never going to get into Coventry. that's it, it's all over. And luckily I got in. They
Wow.
must have been short of a student or two that year.
Oh, don't be so hard on yourself, mate. Don't be so hard on yourself. So, and then what year were you at COV?
90 to 94.
Okay.
And then in fact, I went back after Reliant and did the postgrad and did 98 to 99.
Okay. And did you do a third year placement at COV?
I did, yes. It was a recession. So I ended up working at a handrail company in Welling Garden, living in Welling Garden City.
Okay.
Hatfield, yeah.
Wow, a handrail company.
Yes, a handrail, designing extrusions.
Ooh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, we're going to talk tonight a lot about one particular car. And I said today on the post that we put out to remind everybody, it's a car that you've both worked on and written about.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll come to the book in a bit because the book is just fabulous and yeah, worth a read in itself. But yeah, so one of the first, is it the first job you did post university or one?
No, it was a second job. My second
job. Yeah. So your second job was to redesign the Robin Reliant.
It was just weird. I was my first job lasted for about 3 years, and the company unfortunately split up, so we were all made redundant. And then within 3 weeks, I had got the job at Reliant, and they wanted me to be a freelancer. So I was 25 years old when that happened, or was it just 25? I think maybe 24. And it was yeah, a mixture of exciting and complete nervousness, because my first job was money no object, you know, projects were all imagination. And then Reliant was, you know, I was stuck in a porter cabin in a semi-derelict factory basically, and it was complete opposite end of the scale. So, but really exciting at the same time, you know.
Yeah. Well, do you want to start your images, because there's some just
okay,
and talk us through some of them, because they're incredible images. And these are, we should say that a lot of these are from your book, aren't they, that you've collated and gathered? And
yeah, so what do you want me to do, the sort of history of Reliant leading up to where the book
starts? Brilliant.
Okay, all right, I'll start that. Let's see. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, there it is.
There we go. So this is an old brochure, right from the history that Reliant did their own brochure of the three-wheeler. And you can see on the left there, it all started in 1935, actually, at Raleigh, of Raleigh Chopper and Raleigh Bicycles fame. And they made these three-seater three-wheeler cars and vans. And this chap who was, I think he was the chief engineer or something at Reliant, his name was Tom Williams. Mm-hmm. He basically, Raleigh said, we don't think there's a market for this stuff. It's a bit silly. And so Mr. Williams basically said, okay, well, I think it's all right if we buy some tooling from you and we'll go it alone. So him and a friend left Raleigh and built the first one in his garage in typical English fashion. And the next year they'd made enough and sold enough to move to an old bus depot, and they started making millions from then on, you know, of pounds. And so that's the history really up to 1956. You can see then right behind the chap on the right hand side there, you can see one lurking. He's either a giant or it's in the distance, I'm not sure.
He's a very suave looking gent, isn't he? I mean, he's
typical Reliant owner, I think you'll find.
I think so, yes.
Yes. So if it'll press the button, I don't know what's going on here. Here we go. There we go. So Reliant, we're all building things in the traditional fashion of aluminium bodies over an ash frame, and by this stage, this is the Regal here on the left, in 1956, they were really up to speed with it. But since about 1940s, a rumor has it this guy who worked in the factory was reading his boat magazines and was up to date with all the stuff in America, and saw things were made of fiberglass, this newfangled composite. Mm-hmm. And he actually went to the management of Reliant and said, I think we should do this. and the price of aluminium went through the roof after World War II. So it's still on a high. So they started making their bodies out of fiberglass. And this is the car you can see here on the left, looking very glamorous, is the Regal Mark III. And that was the first all composite bodied vehicle in Europe. And you can see why it hasn't really received the notoriety, because
yeah.
There's the glamour of the Corvette on the left there, which was the first composite bodied car in the world, in mass production talking. There were plenty of lower volume ones in the States in the 40s, but this is like serious numbers. And then in 1956, that's 53, then in 56, we got the Mark III, looking, you know, shooting above its weight there. Yeah. And then bottom left, we've got the Elite from Lotus, which was the first monocoque glass fiber in 57. And but Reliant by this stage, we're doing 1,500 of these a year, which puts it in the mass.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
So, yeah. So, and then, you know, this is about the layout really of why it's got a wheel at the front and not at the back.
Now, this was one of the things I was going to ask you, because obviously we see some other cars there. Ones, in fact, that you have also worked on. If we can say that. So we've got Volkswagen's GX3, which was this concept three-wheeler, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With the driven wheel at the back, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. That had a 1.6 Polo engine behind the seat, so it went like hell.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Morgan three-wheeler.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then we've got a mixture of things where we've got the front wheel. So the ones where you got the two red wheels at the front, the pair of wheels is called a tadpole formation, and the ones where you got the single wheel at the front is called a delta formation.
Okay.
So the delta ones are the ones that you tend to fit your goods vehicles or 4 passengers in, and the tadpole ones are the ones that handle really well, and but you can really only fit 2 passengers in.
So I guess that answers the question really in terms of why Reliant went with the layout they did, because obviously you've got to fit 4 people in it, haven't you?
You've got to fit 4 people. Look at where the centre of gravity is really, and on all of them with 4 people in, you can see they're placed over the rear wheels as much as possible.
Yeah.
And the engine, the weird one is this Piaggio, how that manages it, but it does. I think it's probably quite prone to roll over, but not so bad. But none of the other 3-wheelers roll over that badly, particularly the Robin and definitely the tadpole formation ones. They've got no problems at all. But the Robin is there to put all the engine is mid-mounted with the passengers as far back as you can. So that's why. So you can't put anything on the either side or above the single rear wheel. It would just be too high a centre of gravity and it'd topple over. Yeah. So that's the reason.
Yeah. And what about the weight? Because obviously with everything shoved back, the front is quite light, isn't it? Is it prone to lift or?
It is, yeah. In the book where I've aero tested it, and it's kind of like a giant void under the bodywork, and above 70, I can speak from experience, it goes a little bit twitchy.
Because you are as well, I should say this, you've written about it, you've designed the facelift, and you're an owner.
I am an owner, yes.
You are an owner. So, I mean, Reliant really does kind of figure deep in your life, doesn't it?
Yes, it's scarred me greatly. And
so when you say from personal experience it can lift at above 70, you know, don't you?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I had one as a company car when I was doing another vehicle I'll show you in a bit, and with 4 wheels. And I was tailgating people on the M40 at 85 in this Rialto, and never seen so many looks in the rear view mirrors, but it really starts lifting off at that speed.
Yeah.
And passing trucks are really quite scary.
I can imagine, my goodness. Anyway, I'll let you continue with that thought.
Yes, so that's the reason for the wheels being in that formation, really.
Yeah.
And the Robin isn't as unstable as you think it is. So there's another sort of loose end to tie up, which is sort of starting before we start it. So this is quite important, actually. There's you see the guy on the left there stood up in his duffel coat.
Yeah.
The same guy kneeling on the right hand picture down there, you can see.
Yeah.
And his name's John Crossthwaite. So the drivers in the car on the left is a BRM.
Yeah.
And the guy sat in it is Graham Hill.
Yeah.
And the guy on the right is Jack Brabham. And John Crossthwaite was their chief engineer. And so he was race winning Formula One cars and doing IndyCar racing as well. And it's about this time in 1966 when Reliance said, we need your services. So they hired him to design. He was chief engineer at Reliant from 1967. So he ended up doing the Scimitar chassis and the Bond Bug chassis at Kitten, and the Robin has a Formula One engineered chassis, you could say.
Hey.
Stretching it, but
Hey.
Yeah, sounds good. And by which time they made all these vehicles. So there's a ton of four-wheel vehicles there, and they were exporting all around the world. So Greece and Turkey, to name but a few. And on the bottom right there, you can see they made some jet skis called the scooter ski, which mainly exported to California. So they were some of the world's first water skis, jet skis.
Now, when you showed me this, because obviously you and I had a chat before, and you showed me this slide, I was gobsmacked at just how many things Reliant had done.
Yes, incredible, and so much for Ford. Actually, they were part of Ford in Turkey, and so they ended up doing truck cabs and all their four-wheeled cars that were kits to set up the Turkish car industry called Otosan, which now Ford owns. Use Ford mechanicals, and actually that sort of culminated in the 80s when they ended up building the RS200 rally car and stuff.
Wow.
So there's this sort of whole thing, and then the third sort of converging thing is that this is their engine, an exciting picture, I know, but it's Europe's first all-alloy engine. And it beat Coventry Climax to be mass produced. So this is the first overhead valve all-alloy engine mass produced in Europe, which is fitted to, it first made its debut, as you can see in that Regal in bottom left, Del Boy's van shape, basically.
Yeah.
So this is quite a good engine. In fact, it's a phenomenal engine, and it's been known for these three-wheelers to be scrapped and then bought solely so the engines could be used in single-seaters.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so, your car that you own, is that pretty much the same engine unchanged, or?
It is. I've got the final iteration of my 850, and actually, as it happens, there's a guy who builds these engines for race cars who lives up the road. So when I blew my head gasket on the M40, I took it to him to have it mildly race built. So it's great in a straight line.
Okay, that's incredible though. That it's the first all-alloy unit.
It is, yeah. Just pipped Coventry Climax to the post, but by a couple of months, so it really was that tight. But it is technically, yeah.
And that's 800cc.
Started at 600, and then it gradually crept its way up to 850.
850, wow.
Yeah, so which if you think the car weighs 450 kilos, and this gives you 40 horsepower, that's not, it's verging on the ridiculous.
Yes, that's yes, my goodness.
Yeah,
positively overpowered.
No wonder it lifts so much at the moment.
Well, brilliant.
So this is it. This is the start point of the book, really. We've got the backstory before we begin thing, and this is really a start of a friendship too. So on the left, you can see the new managing director called Ray Wiggin, and on the right is a very young Tom Caron. And the car in the center is the first project that Ray Wiggin handed over to Tom Caron to say, we need to facelift this. Because at the time, they were selling hundreds of thousands. They sold in the end 105,000 of these Regals. in their 10-year history. So it was a huge million pound market that they had to look after. So this is the first project, and you see the original Ogle sketches down the bottom there of what they were proposing to facelift it with, and that's where it all begins for the Robin.
And it's interesting because I know that there are a few car designers or ex-designers in this group, and if any of them are like me, when I first saw this page in the book, I got seriously excited because just seeing design sketches, there's something for each car designer amongst us that just doesn't matter what they are, we kind of get excited when we see sketches, don't we?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I found these. I mean, they're such lovely sketches, and they were actually all A3 roughly in size. Wow. And you know, they're beautiful. Yeah, Ogle did some really lovely stuff.
It's a bit of a lost art, the hand sketch, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think it's coming back a bit, actually. I think it's, yeah,
lovely. Okay, so that's where we kind of come to the start. What happens next?
Well, then they start doing the Robin, and Tom Caron comes up with this idea to do the Robin, and you know, it starts off as a 2-seater shopping car in 1963, and it went back and forth, and in 1973 it was launched. So you know, that was their crucial product, because the three-wheeler, although it was a bit of a joke to us, was actually this backbone to this huge company, which was at the time the second largest company in the UK after British Leyland.
Goodness, I just never knew. You know, again, it comes back to that slide you showed before of all the products that Reliant made.
Yeah,
and you know, obviously they're so well known for the Robin, but actually they made so much more.
They did. It's incredible, and they were you know, sought after because of, it didn't tell you that the John Crosthwaite, once he finished at Reliant, was doing a good enough job that he was headhunted by Hyundai to set up for the 1975 Pony. So he was one of the founding engineers of the Hyundai Pony, and so the composite knowledge of Reliant was actually sought out by Ford and Lotus and all other sorts of manufacturers. It was they were really at the top of their game.
Peter Birtwistle, Peter obviously was head of Mazda Design Europe. Peter saying Jim English used to do a lot of the Ogle sketches and was a brilliant artist.
Right. Yeah. I think they employed some designers we know of a lot now. They sort of, a lot of them seem to start at Ogle, but they were all talented guys.
Yeah. Brilliant. So let's bring this up to then your involvement, can we?
Yeah, so Reliant went through a few tumultuous times, and it was sometime in the 80s that they were, you know, sort of a bit on the downward slope. Hence, you know, this is the real peak of it all, actually. And the Robin started on the downward slope, and they had going through another recession, and the first time it went, after several fires, it went bankrupt, is because the directors decided to sink all their property debts into Reliant, and it couldn't cope with it. So the company went down.
Yeah.
And since then, it sort of limped along, really. And, you know, by then the three-wheeler market was failing, and it was all getting a bit small, and they were trying their best to do four-wheelers. So when I came into the picture, it had just been taken over by a consortium that was fronted up by a guy called Jonathan Haynes, who was the son of William Haynes, was a founding engineer of Jaguar. And I believe Jonathan's son now runs the E-Type restoration business.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. So he was brilliant. So Jonathan ran it, and then it was also sort of they owned Fletcher speedboats and pharmaceutical companies, and Reliant was the major shareholders' hobby. So he decided to collect them and own the company. I think that's how it went, anyway, as far as I know. And so they were really trying to set the company up again, and it just been made bankrupt in 1996, I think, 97. And so I joined in 97. And they'd already got some projects there. So this is where what the aim was to produce some four-wheel cars, and admittedly, none of these are an oil painting, but they were all had to be done on a budget of next to nothing with what they had. So it started with this. This is what existed when I went for my interview, and on the top right, you can see a foam model, which was done by a guy called Jeff Wardle, who worked at Tatra and at Saab, and he now is pretty senior in the Pasadena Art School, I believe. So they've just done this scimitar, it was going to be, with a retractable windscreen. You can see there's Jeff's sketch on the top left, and this is where it was. And unfortunately, it never went any further. The bottom ones are my sort of sketches for where I wanted to take it for a family look. But this was going to have the Robin 850 engine in it and be a four-seater open top sports car, but absolutely tiny thing. But it would, I think it would have been all right, really, you know, considering what they had to deal with. But that unfortunately got chainsawed outside my porter cabin.
Brutal.
Yes, it was a bit. And then the next project I worked on was this four-wheel bomb bug, which was also, it was phenomenal. It drove amazingly well. In the middle there, you can see I'm a young 25-year-old me. I haven't changed, driving around the yard, and it would do some, you know, don't mention health and safety, but it would do some donuts in the yard and fitted just the barrier and all sorts. It was great. Yeah. And we were, you know, going to do a convertible version, and it got as far as the dealer convention, as you can see there. It was been in the Sun newspaper, and it was going to be a thing. Yeah. But and that had to be canned too because of emissions rules in the end, unfortunately. But that was going to be another vehicle, and you can see the pattern making on the left there was quite rudimentary, shall we say. It was, that's my handiwork there with body filler and building foam.
Goodness.
And yeah, that was unfortunately canned, but it was that vehicle that I was on the way down on the M40 on, actually, but trying to do at the time. And then we did a new kitten. I mean, you know, this also got as far as the bottom right, went to the same dealer convention, and it was basically, what can we do with Reliant Mechanicals, and how many model ranges can we do? They were going to do fuel injected engine, and it was all being looked at, but it was the dreaded regulations that killed them, and before they started, unfortunately. So what they were left with was the Robin, and they realised that the molds were absolutely cream crackered for the Robin on the Mark II, and you know, these big tubs of body filler, they had to go at squaring it out, and it took 7 of those tubs to square a body out, which is mad. So yes. It was either do some new molds. Bear in mind that when the last receivers were in, there was nothing left of the company. There was no technical drawings found. There was nothing. So it was basically starting from scratch about how.
Where had it all gone then?
Well, as it turned up, it's turned up years later in this container, and so it was there, but at the time we didn't know where they were, and even if there was no way of measuring anything. So it was all starting from scratch. So they basically said, look at facelifting the Robin, and this is my sort of 4th job in the time I was there. So I had 3 months to do this project.
Did you find did it feel kind of dispiriting, because you get all these potentially exciting projects, you know, small roadster, 4-wheel bomb bug, you know, and you get so far, and then they're kind of canned, obviously with the bomb bug kind of fairly last moment. That must have been pretty tough to kind of take.
Yes and no. I mean, it was so fast moving, there was never a dull moment, so there wasn't time really to reflect on it until afterwards, I think. Yeah, it was more a case of, oh, thank God that one's gone. I've got enough work to do, you know.
Yes. Goodness.
But yeah, so we ended up with this, and I think in the end I did a few proposals, and again with low volume stuff, particularly with this limited budget, you can't design your own lamps, and so everything depends on what you can get for your lamps. And you know, and what you can get for free really as well. So Ford and Vauxhall gave away their lamps to be used officially. But I wanted to put some Rover 100 tail lamps on it for the Metro facelift. And I think Rover at the time wanted 10 grand or something. We're talking in the mid 90s for just a license fee to use them. And of course, the answer was no. So hence it's stuck with the same tail lights. But in the end, they decided to go with sticking with the Fiesta Mark II lamps and sticking this grille on the front. So there it is. So I went out to the yard one weekend, and there's this thing called the Masters, which are in the yard, and they were lined up in the yard from all the old three-wheelers, and they're basically, you can see that they're pitch pine legs and this huge thick sort of glass fiber shell, which is about ½ an inch thick in glass fiber, weighs tons. So I forklifted that out the yard, as that was the newest one to choose. They've been sat in the yard for over 10 years, and this is the only reference we had for doing anything. So I stuck it on a trailer and towed it up to Fletcher's behind a scimitar. And this is Fletcher Speedboat's development shop, and used a couple of their guys and the expertise of their chief designer to help really. So it was all done in building foam and body filler. I'll go back, and you can sort of see it was done on one side.
Yeah.
Did put this grill on, and then you mark off every 100 mil along there and template it from side to side, and that's how we sort of roughly made sure it's symmetrical. But the floor of the barn was sloping, so we had to set this thing up on wedges and really guess where anything was level wise.
Yeah, right.
So it was all guessed really. So
and that's, I mean, you know, you're 24, 25 at the time. That's a lot on your shoulders. You know, you go to a big company, and you and I have both worked in bigger companies. You certainly wouldn't have that degree of responsibility as a fairly newish designer. You know, it takes years to, you know, but there you are, second job, and you're straight into it.
Yeah, I was bricking it really.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it was very nerve-wracking, but you know, we managed to get this far with it, and you know, it was all good. And there's the one with the 7 tubs on the left there of filler, and that's when they decided to. But it's just something, you know, the tailgate was, you can see the body filler put in the existing tailgate, and it all had to sort of work as my little plywood wheel I set it up with and things. There's the 2 old guys from Reliant helping me out, and because of the engine placement, it was overheating a bit, so the grill gradually grew and grew in size, and you can see the sort of mouth here as well, and it sort of became this, and this is the yellow one in its final form really. There were going to be no prototypes. That's what really made me brick it, was that all the production molds would be taken off this. There was going to be no trials.
Goodness.
So it all got a bit, you know, the deadline loomed and stuff, and I suddenly realized the day before the deadline that I hadn't actually worked out the bonnet swing, because there's no bonnet hinges, it's just 2 pegs to save weight into the side. And I thought, blimey, I haven't sorted that out. So I did an all-nighter and nicked a couple of bolts off the toilet doors in the gents and fitted into a bit of plywood and fitted on, and actually by sheer fluke the line I'd taped up worked. So I worked all night, got the bonnet swing in, and we got the engine bay molded and modeled in, and that was it. We had the review with the director at the time, and he said, it looks a bit ugly, doesn't it? And I think he might have had a point.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a face only its mother could love.
Yes, there's some lipstick on that pig. And it's yeah, so I think he had a point, and he basically said, right, well, we're not going to use Fiesta lamps, and you know, I think we've proved the point that we need to go back to using some other lamps. So I'd done the sketches you've seen previously, and because one of their shareholders was Indian, that made the San locomotive, they use Corsa lamps. So I was told to use Corsa lamps.
Goodness.
So after a couple of months' work, and this is where it got to, you can see the black lines on here, and I've written keep on the number plate, which is my only datum really.
Yeah.
And so the rest of that front round these lines here was sawn off.
Oh my goodness.
So you can see I've done a few molds in the background here. I call them evil Ednas really, because they're on little wooden feet. And I knew that the lamps sort of worked, but that's what we were going to do. So there's a sketch. That's the Corsa B that they're from. And that was it. Used Corsa lamps, which was a bit at the time. I thought, well, they're sort of rounded lamps on a sort of square car. It's quite a challenge.
I was going to say, because for those perhaps listening who aren't necessarily familiar with automotive design in this kind of sense, you are completely having to change the character of a car by only changing the shortest bit of it, really, the front section.
Yeah.
And you've still got to make this work, and you've still got to make it look good. And yeah, I mean, you know, people think that we kind of just felt it varies, but actually this is where the skill comes in, and the understanding of form, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it really pushed me, I have to say. It was all the Robins up to now used the same doors and tailgates, so to get as much differentiation as I could in the Mark II, because I thought, well, we've got the same lamps, and you know, we've got this huge sort of nose on the front of it. I put on a different side, so it's got the first sort of change of doors and this sort of lifeline up the side to try and differentiate it from all the previous Robins. But I wasn't allowed to change any of the glass or any of the interior moldings, nothing at all like that. It had to be, you know, immediately past regulations, the idea of this, until you put the new lamps on. So then, as I said, there were no drawings or anything like that. So they want to put these lamps in front of this thing you've seen, and I had no idea which way was up. How do you stick some lamps out of unpack them out of the box, stick them in the front of a vehicle on the production line, and know that they're pointing in the same direction? You know, it's not squint or anything like that. So I came up with lamps on a plank, which is unboxed the lamps. I found out where the beams pointed and made some glass fiber spectacles, if you like, for them, and nicked the beam aligner off the production line and put them on a couple of old chairs on wedges and linked them up to a car battery, and basically moved them around until they shone into the beam aligner, which is how they're going to be built. And then I body filled them down to the plank.
Goodness me.
and that was all I could think of, was, you know, and then I had to think of a way of, there you can see the evil Ednas, and I made sure the plank fitted in the front of the front of it.
Yeah.
But still no idea how to orient the plank at all, really. So then chopped the front end off, as I said, keeping the number plate, and all this trestle was set up with a spirit level, really. And these plugs have got the legal angles, because it all has to pass legislation for the viewing angles of the lamps and the heights and the spacing of them and everything. And it all had to be kind of set up with a spirit level and you know, and the best guess. So this is it.
Pete Burstwhistle's comment is, bloody hell, this is hilarious.
Yeah. In retrospect, I think he's right.
But I mean, again, it's all credit to you. You know, there you are, fairly fresh in the industry, with no kind of senior design manager to report to. You are it.
Yeah.
And
which meant I could get away with, you know, a lot of mistakes as well. But
also you have that you know, the fact that, as you were saying, the buck stops with you, and you're in a very difficult position where you're given a set of lamps and said, right, make those fit, basically, and you've got no datum, nothing to work from, so you're starting from scratch, aren't you? Yeah,
it just, you know, hope that they were right, really. You know, you only had one shot at it, and we sort of measured what we thought was the right height. I mean, it's not even at right height off the ground, this thing on the barn floor. So we sort of measured 7 cars in the yard and found they're all different, and, you know, just largely guessed within 10 mil or thereabouts on the height of these, and sort of hope that they worked. And that was that. So I squirted some foam into a bin liner, and that's the start of hacking away at some of that, that can of insulation foam. And we got a front end looking like this. You can see it in some gel coat and wax there. So that's what it looked like at the end of it. And then we had to cut it off again because of the way the lamps are mounted. You can just see they've got these huge mountings in there, which you just can't load into a molding. You have to have this removable nose cone to be able to cover up all the gubbins and to make it nice, neat and tidy.
Right.
So you can see we took a molding off the nose there, and then again chopped it all apart, and that was it on the floor again, and then built it up again from scratch. So we had to put some holes in plywood there, and they were a 2p piece in my pocket I drew around at the time just to get the circle. And there's the nose cone mold in the background there, and there's the nose cone. And so the idea at the time was that we had not only going to do the Robin, but again, we're trying to get as many variants as you could out of it. There was going to be an electric one and a diesel one, and a van and a pickup. So this nose cone gave us a way of getting model differentiation really cheaply.
Right, yes. So you're just changing the aperture and maybe, I guess, some of the surfacing on that radius above the aperture, aren't you?
Yeah, basically. I mean, the pickup's a whole new mold, the white one, but this electric one on the left and the conventional one on the right are the same, except for the nose cone. So it's just a really easy way of just giving it an immediate sort of differentiation or accident repair or a facelift if different lamps needed to be used. It was really convenient, as it turned out.
Goodness.
So yeah, that's where we got to the Robin. So yes, I was quite nervous throughout, shall we say?
Yes. Yeah.
But it got there in the end. And so these are the different versions. There was the hatch and the pickup and the van, which I proposed we had an extended tailgate Fiat Panda style on, and an EV. But in the end, the only one that made it was the normal petrol powered Robin, and there it is at Earl's Court Motor Show.
Wow, you had a car released at a motor show. Not many people can say that.
Yours for 10 grand.
10 grand.
10 grand in the late 90s.
And how long was it in production after that?
They made, I think it was just over 500, and
okay.
So it lasted 2 years.
Yeah.
And then lots of things went on, and they sold the rights to a company called BN Plastics, who in Suffolk, and they made, they don't know, maybe between 5 and 30 of them, and then troubles hit, and that was it. This is the last vehicle Reliant ever made.
Goodness. So you were there right at the very end.
Yeah, at the sputtering moments. It was it's weird looking back on it,
Yeah, yeah. Incredible. But I still, I mean, I don't want to milk it to death, but I mean, the kind of almost courage involved in having to kind of go, right, there's nobody else but me, and we've got to get on with it and do it, and you've got deadlines, and there'll be some of us who know what design deadlines are like. You are working right up often until the last minute, until the kind of company bigwigs walk in, and even then you're not always involved in the discussion, are you? You're kind of to one side while they chat. But you've got, none of that. You're just straight in. It must have been some of the most frightening months of your life, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, the Robin was only 3 months really, but it's stayed with me, shall we say, but been really good. A very, very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
But when I look back on it, I'm so chuffed I had the opportunity.
So after the Robin, what was next for you?
Well, I then was really stressed by this project actually, and so I left Reliant, and I sort of knew that I needed to learn a program called Alias and digital modeling, and it was either going to be, I wanted to take either a year off because I was that scarred by the whole thing, or I chose the sensible thing, which is to go back to university and put my efforts into learning Alias, where I thought the future was.
And I know you can't say everything, but where are you now, Andy?
Well, I'm contracting, so at the moment I'm contracting at Bentley.
Okay, yeah. But this wasn't the only three-wheeler you were involved in, was it?
No, I mean, it's weird how things happen, but I showed you in the previous, but I was an Alias guy actually in America, and I worked for Volkswagen in California, and we did the three-wheeler GX3, and I was a digital design model maker for that one of the team, and that was going to be productionized actually. And,
oh, really?
That was an epic project.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. And then bizarrely, a third one sort of came along, which I finished last year, which is on the Morgan Super 3.
So their new three-wheeler.
That's it, yeah. And
you got three-wheelers running through your design career, Andy. That's quite something.
It's quite odd, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know, and all ones I'm incredibly proud to have worked on.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. Very, very odd coincidence.
What struck me though, since we've been talking, is that some of, you know, particularly maybe the four-wheel kitten or some of this stuff, you can in some ways argue that actually these are cars that we need now, you know, in the sense of small, economical, lightweight cars, probably EVs, you know. Do you ever, I mean, would there ever be another Robin Reliant, do you think?
I can't see there being another three-wheeler in this configuration. I think the days have gone of social mobility being people wanting to get out of the rain, which is what it boils down to. You know, a motorcycle and sidecar. No thanks, I'll lay it up over winter, and you know, I'll take Robin. So it's things have moved on from those days, and I don't see there'll ever be another Reliant Robin. No, I can't see there will be one of those. But there's definitely space for lightweight, even, you know, in conventional engine cars still.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Something like a four-wheel Bond bug.
Yeah,
you know, there's something in that, you know, that kind of slightly sporty, you know, almost kind of slightly smart roadster Bond bug. You know, that you can have a bit of fun even though you live in the city or something. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think there will be more, particularly with the fuel prices and everything that's happening at the moment. I think there is definitely a market for, shall we say, lower end vehicles again. I definitely think they'll be coming back.
Andy, a brilliant set of images. Thank you for sharing those. They're just amazing. So I want to talk about this next, if we can.
Sure.
Have you got any more images you wanted to show us?
No, I haven't. No, I was just checking.
Just checking. So if we can come to the big screen again.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I want to talk about this next, because how did this start? I mean, what, you know, yeah, go on, tell us the story.
Well, you know, I had all these pictures you've seen, really, of the development of it. And I was working away from home at the time, and I was on the Dyson electric vehicle and living away in my bedsit in the weekdays. And, you know, you finish work in the evening, you have your dinner, you go to the gym, and then you have a bit of a cry. And you sort of think, what can I do with my life, really, now? It's the evenings. And they say everybody's got a book in them, and I think a lot of people would like me to put it back where it belongs, but it's sort of, you know, it was, I sort of asked around, and people said, oh, you should write a book about that. And I talked to a couple of publishers, and they said, yeah, there's definitely mileage in that. Yeah. So I thought, right, well, that will give me something to do. So that's how it happened. Yeah.
But I mean, you say, you know, people put it back on the shelves. I mean, it won the Motoring Book of the Year at the Royal Automobile Club Awards, didn't it?
So, yeah, it blew me away. Yeah.
You haven't done too badly on that score, and it is. I mean, you know, obviously people go out and buy it, but it is just brilliant. There's some absolutely brilliant bits in here. I mean, a little bit of what we've seen. But you very kindly sent me this copy, just at the same point that Steve Saxty sent me his copies of his four books. So I had these books, and both of them, yours and his, I just found fascinating. Partly because I like history, and also being a petrol head. So it sits very proudly next to my Aston Martin books and my Ferrari book and my, and my Rover P4 book. Got to get that one in. But it is absolutely brilliant. And again, it's one of those things where you look at the images and the pictures, and there's some brilliant stuff in here that unless you'd written this book, wouldn't have seen the light of day, would they? I mean, there's some.
No, that's right. Thanks. No, it's more designed to be a coffee table book. There are some books out there where you can find about the rivet upgrade from 1935 to 1946 if you really want to. But I wanted to do more of a design-led book that made the point really that everything's designed, even a joke is designed, and this joke was a multi-million-pound business.
And it was part of our motoring landscape, wasn't it? I mean, whether you like them or not, they were part of our culture. They were an icon of British motoring.
They were, yeah, and they were. Everybody had them. I mean, look at the figures, But then in recent history, either people deny it or they go, oh, and whenever I drive mine somewhere, people always come up with the story. Oh, my dad had one of those. He had it on his roof around the roundabout or something like that. And, it just inspires so much friendliness and happiness wherever it goes. Everybody has something funny or nice to say about it.
It's a bit like the Allegro, isn't it? You meet people who own Allegros, and now they're kind of slightly cool in that because they're a classic and because they were kind of maligned by so many people, actually owning one is now kind of slightly cool. Nice mug.
Oh,
but I just found it absolutely fascinating. And there is, as I say, some of the history, I mean, I didn't realize how much Reliant made. And then to see things like this, original clay model shots, and this little three-wheeler car, as you say, it's been designed. Somebody's shaped it, molded it.
Not just designed, but it was, it had all these sort of things. It had, if I might, the engine and the F1, John Crossthwaite engineering the chassis, and Ogle design, which were a really big deal. I might put my neck on the line and say they're England's equivalent of Pininfarina, if I might say that much. But Tom Cairn is a genius, and he started off many people's careers and designed many iconic things like the chopper.
Exactly, yeah, and the Scimitar sports car, which Princess Anne had them, and I mean, they were great looking cars, and actually the idea of a sports estate like that, there's still something very cool about that and very different.
Yeah. Well, that started, I think Volvo's P1800 and stuff. That was down to Tom Cairn, really.
And there's some lovely other things you've got here. I mean, these adverts, the period adverts from various points in the car's life, stuff like this. I mean, it's just, you don't have to be a petrol head to enjoy the history of it, because there's just some brilliant bits in it. I mean, have you been pleased the reception with the book that the books have?
Absolutely, top tippled over, you could say. Absolutely astounded, really. I didn't expect it. It is a niche book, it's while everybody likes it, a lot of people go, oh yes, but I'm not really interested, thank you. But actually, the more you get into it, the more stuff interests people in the book, and actually where it's gone in the world and sold to is astounding.
Really?
Yeah, it's all over all the corners of the globe, really.
All the corners of the globe, everywhere, somewhere has a copy of this book. And I mean, I'm not saying this just because Andy's here, But I do encourage you, if you're watching, grab a copy of it because it is absolutely brilliant. And some of the images and even the layout is really nice and kind of different, and in terms of the kind of graphics of the book. And it's just a fascinating story. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Fab. Andy, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. So you're now at Bentley and alias modelling at Bentley. How's the Reliant itself going, the Robin?
Oh, it's fantastic. You know, it's fully restored now and goes to as many rallies as I can do. I think it came to see you at Bicester on your stand at Bicester. The furthest I've ever taken that was a lovely jaunt through the Cotswolds.
Nice.
And yeah, it's going really well. I absolutely love driving it, actually.
Brilliant.
Even round corners.
Even around corners. Just to say, Pete Birtwhistle's said it's a great book. Thoroughly recommend it.
Oh, thank you, Pete.
There you go. And Pete's written one of his own as well. All these designers writing books. It's fantastic. What I think for me, what I love about this, what I loved about Steve's books and actually Pete's as well, is that this is stuff I grew up with, and I remember reading about and seeing in magazines and seeing on our high streets. It's stuff I can identify with, and I think that, you know, I've started buying old issues of car magazine so that I could read the articles that I read when I was a kid getting into cars.
Yeah.
You know, probably like you, I'd kind of go down to the newsagent every week and grab, you know, see what was in Autocar and then grab car every month and, you know, things like that. So this stuff is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's always the same. I'd go down to Martin's, the newsagent it was in my local town, and there would be an issue of Car magazine, and they're written Russell Bolgin and LJK Setright and all the other writers that was just, even as, you know, in 1986, I was just getting into it then, and it was just, it started me off. It was the best magazine out there at the time. I thought.
Steve Cropley and Gavin Green and all those people.
Absolutely.
We ought to get. I know we've had Steve doing stuff with us before, but we ought to. He's a story worth telling, I think, as well. Really.
I reckon, yeah, that'd be cool.
But yeah, so folks, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been brilliant. If you've got any questions, stick them up on there. If you get any after we've finished, then we'll post them off to Andy and he can answer them back, and we'll put them on. What I do want to do just before we go is to draw your attention to just a few things, if I may, for those that are here. Firstly, and probably chiefly, is the Pilgrim Tour, which takes place in September, end of September. And the Pilgrim Tour, we've been very fortunate in that Morgan and Net Hero have come and supported us, and we are going to have a Morgan that will be available for us to use on the tour. And one of the things that we thought we wanted to do was we wanted to give people perhaps who wouldn't ever get the chance to do this the opportunity to be on the tour driving the Morgan. And so what we've done is we've set up a little Just Giving page, which basically we want you to nominate people you think should be considered for the 2 seats of the Morgan for the Pilgrim Tour. And there's simply just 2 criteria by which to make your nomination. Either somebody who's never done something like this, would never be in a position to do that, or somebody who you know has had a really difficult time, particularly over these last few years, and who might just really appreciate the chance to do something like this. So they're the 2 criteria, and I will stop sharing that now and share the other one, which has the Just Giving link, which I will put here. Share this. Is that the one? No, that's the wrong one. never mind. I will post the Just Giving link, and there's a Just Giving page there. We're just asking for a £2 donation to help support the cost of the tour and further Revs projects that we are going to be running, all geared around this idea of supporting people in their mental and spiritual well-being. So yeah, we would really like it if people could nominate people that they would like to see. You can email us at revslimited@gmail.com, and then we will get all the nominations, and a group of people will make a decision, yeah, it'll be hopefully something that we can really offer somebody that will be something really positive and really good. So that's that. Next month we will kind of publicize when we're going to do it. We've got a few guests in line over the next couple of months, one including the hopefully the managing director of Alpha Romeo North America. So we're going to be chatting to him hopefully, and also to the autocar journalist Matt Pryor, who's just been away in the Ukraine delivering ambulances, and so we're going to talk to Matt about his experience of that and what that was like, and how he got the chance to go, and what the ambulances will be used for, which sounds a bit strange because obviously they're ambulances, but he was saying to me that you know, these things have a life expectancy of probably only a few months, so they have to keep getting ambulances out there in order for people to be able to use them. So yeah, we're going to be talking to Matt, and there's a few other things that we've got in store too, so keep an eye on the Facebook page. But for now, thank you for joining us tonight. Hope you've all enjoyed it. Andy, mate, thank you so much. It's been absolutely brilliant, and so glad we kind of got round to doing it, and yeah, it's been brilliant. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
So folks, we will see you anon very soon, and please take care, please stay safe, God bless you and your loved ones, and we will yeah, be back soon. Thank you very much.